AITA for not donating my kidney to my brother after he bullied me for years? I, 27F, have always had a strained relationship with my older brother, Jake, 30M. Growing up, he was the golden child, good at sports, popular, and always the center of attention. My parents doted on him, and I was always left in the background, trying to make myself smaller to avoid his torment. Jake made my life miserable. He teased me constantly, calling me names, making fun of my appearance, and even hitting me when our parents weren't looking. He never missed a chance to remind me that I was less than him. It wasn't just normal sibling rivalry, what Jake did was relentless. He ruined my self-esteem. I struggled to make friends, not just because I was shy, but because I didn't feel like I was worth being around. My parents never took it seriously. "That's just how brothers are," they'd say when I'd cry after yet another one of his cruel comments. They never once stood up for me. When I left for college, I thought I could finally breathe. I moved out, cut contact with Jake, and tried to build a life without his presence looming over me. I went to therapy, worked on my self-confidence, and learned to set boundaries. For a while, I felt free. I barely spoke to Jake. To be honest, I barely spoke to my parents either. Their constant dismissal of my feelings made it hard for me to connect with them. But life has a way of dragging you back into the mess you thought you'd escaped from. A few weeks ago, my parents called me with some serious news. Jake is sick. Really sick. He has a kidney disease and needs a transplant to survive. My parents asked if I would get tested to see if I could donate one of my kidneys to him. To say I was shocked is an understatement. I didn't even know how to respond. My brother, the same one who had made my life a living hell for years, now needed me to save his. And what's more, my parents were framing it like it was my duty, as if I owed it to him simply because we share the same blood. I felt guilty. I mean, of course, I don't want my brother to pass away. Despite everything he did, I still care about him on some level. But I also couldn't shake the resentment that had built up over the years. Jake had never apologized for how he treated me. He never reached out to try to fix things, not even when he knew he was sick. It was like he still didn't care about me, yet here I was, expected to give him a literal part of myself. I tried explaining to my parents how I felt. How Jake's bullying had affected me for years. How it wasn't fair to expect me to make such a huge sacrifice when he had never once shown any remorse for what he'd done. But they didn't want to hear it. They kept telling me that I needed to get over it, that all siblings fight, and that this is life or death. They called me selfish for even hesitating. The pressure was unbearable. Every day, my parents would call and say things like, "Do you want your brother to pass away? Or you're letting him suffer because of some grudge?" They never once asked about how I was feeling. It was all about Jake and how I should be helping him. They didn't care about the toll this decision was taking on me emotionally. They didn't even care about my own health. Speaking of my health, that was another thing. I've had some mild kidney issues myself in the past, and I was scared of what donating might mean for my own future. I went to a doctor, and while they said I could donate, they were honest with me about the risks. It wasn't a decision I could take lightly. But my parents brushed that off too. "You'll be fine," they said. "The doctors wouldn't let you do it if it wasn't safe." And through all of this, Jake said nothing. Not a single word. No apology. No reaching out. Nothing. I finally decided to confront him. I asked him why he hadn't even tried to talk to me about this, why he hadn't said sorry for how he treated me when we were kids. His response? "You're my sister, of course you're going to do this. I don't have too much time for all this." That was it for me. No remorse. No acknowledgement of the pain he caused. He was still the same Jake who never cared about anyone but himself. He didn't see me as a person with feelings or autonomy, just someone who owed him. I turned to my best friend for advice, someone who had been there for me throughout my life, watching as I struggled to navigate my toxic family dynamics. She told me something I really needed to hear: you don't owe him anything. She reminded me that donating a kidney is a life-altering decision, and it's okay to put myself first. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I realized that my guilt was coming from a place of manipulation, not love. I made my decision. I told my parents that I wasn't going to get tested. The fallout was immediate and harsh. My mom cried, my dad called me selfish, and they both said they were ashamed of me. They told me I was letting my brother die, that I was turning my back on my family. Jake didn't even bother to contact me himself, he just let my parents do the dirty work. I feel guilty, I won't lie. Part of me wonders if I made the right choice. But at the same time, I know that if I had gone through with it, I would have been doing it for all the wrong reasons, out of guilt, out of obligation, and out of fear. Not out of love. So, AITA for not donating my kidney to my brother after everything he put me through? Honestly, I don't think I am. Just because we share blood doesn't mean I have to sacrifice myself for someone who never cared about me. Update. It had been weeks since I told my parents I wouldn't donate my kidney to Jake. The aftermath was worse than I could have imagined. My parents didn't stop calling. If anything, they called more often, with every conversation more hostile and manipulative than the last. They wouldn't let it go. I was constantly bombarded with guilt trips, accusations, and pleas. You're unaliving your own brother. My mother would scream over the phone. How could you be so heartless? What did we do to deserve this? My dad wasn't any better. You're going to regret this for the rest of your life, he warned me coldly, his voice tinged with disappointment. When Jake passes away, that's on you. Each conversation left me more emotionally drained than the last. I had already made my decision, one that was incredibly difficult for me, but my parents refused to accept it. It was like nothing I said mattered, like my health, my feelings, and my years of suffering meant nothing in comparison to Jake's. But then, something snapped in me. One night, after yet another call from my mother, I finally couldn't hold back anymore. I had been trying to stay calm, trying to explain my side rationally, but their constant jabs, their refusal to acknowledge my pain, pushed me over the edge. Do you even care about me at all? I shouted into the phone. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, hot and suffocating. You've spent my entire life ignoring everything I went through with Jake, and now you expect me to risk my health for him? Have you ever thought about what this could do to me? There was a stunned silence on the other end. I'm not in perfect health either, I continued, my voice shaking with frustration. I have my own kidney issues. And you know what? I'm terrified. I'm scared of what donating could mean for me, but you don't even care. All you care about is Jake. My mom stuttered, trying to find words, but I didn't let her interrupt. I'm done with this guilt trip. I'm done being made to feel like I owe him something just because I'm his sister. I've been carrying the weight of everything he did to me for years, and you never once stood up for me. You never cared. Now you're asking me to sacrifice my health for him? No. I'm not doing it. I hung up the phone before she could respond. My hands were shaking, my heart racing, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of release. It was the first time I had fully voiced how I felt to them, without trying to soften the blow or make them understand gently. I was done playing the role of the forgiving, obliging daughter. For the next few days, I ignored their calls. I needed space to breathe. I needed time to process everything without their voices in my ear, constantly accusing me of being a terrible person. But then, something changed. It started with texts. Not the usual aggressive, guilt-laden messages, but something different. Please, can we talk? One message from my mom read. I'm sorry. We didn't know how bad your health was. We just want to understand. I didn't reply. The next day, a voicemail from my dad. Look, we were wrong to push you like that.
I didn't know you were dealing with your own health problems.
Can we talk, please? Still, I didn't answer. For the first time in my life, they were the ones reaching out to me, but I wasn't ready to forgive just because they'd realized they were wrong. They had hurt me too deeply. They had dismissed my feelings for too long. Days passed, and the calls kept coming, but now they were different. My parents weren't just demanding or guilt-tripping me anymore, they were apologizing. They were trying to make amends, but I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever would be. One evening, my phone buzzed with a new message, and for some reason, I opened it. It wasn't from my parents. It was from Jake. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. For weeks, Jake had been completely silent, refusing to acknowledge me or what was happening. But here it was, a text from him. I'm sorry. I don't deserve your kidney, and I wasn't going to ask. I never wanted you to be put in this position. I know I've been horrible to you, and I know I can't take any of it back. I don't expect you to forgive me, and honestly, I don't deserve your help after everything I did. I just wanted to say that. I'm sorry. I sat there, rereading the message over and over. A part of me wanted to dismiss it, to brush it off as too little too late. But another part of me felt something shift. Jake had never apologized before, not once in all these years. This wasn't the grand apology I had always dreamed of, but it was something. Later that night, my parents called again. This time, I picked up. We're sorry, my mom said quietly, her voice broken. We didn't realize what we were asking of you. We were so focused on Jake that we didn't see what this was doing to you. We didn't know you were struggling with your own health, and we should have listened. My dad chimed in, his voice soft. We know we messed up. We just didn't know how to handle it. Jake didn't want us to ask you for help. He feels guilty. He feels like he doesn't deserve your kidney because of everything he put you through. We were the ones who pushed for it." The guilt in their voices was palpable. For the first time, they were acknowledging how wrong they had been, how they had failed me as parents. I felt a small sense of satisfaction, but it was tempered by the exhaustion of years of emotional pain. "I'm not donating," I said firmly, but without anger. "I can't do it. And it's not just because of Jake, it's because I need to take care of myself for once. I've spent too long trying to be what everyone else needed me to be." There was a long pause on the other end, but finally, my mom spoke again. "We understand. We're sorry it took us so long to see that. We just want to make things right, however we can." I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to forgive them, but another part of me wasn't ready to let go of the hurt. It wasn't going to be easy to repair the years of damage, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to. But for now, I had set my boundaries. I had stood my ground, and they were finally listening. As for Jake, maybe one day we could talk, maybe not. But for now, I needed to focus on healing myself, without the weight of everyone else's expectations pulling me down.